Hello there, Alaskans, wherever you are. Welcome to the Must Read Alaska Show. Coming to you from somewhere in Alaska. This is the place where we talk about, you guessed it, Alaska. Where we keep the mainstream media on their toes and where we are standing up for what's right in a world run by leftists. You can find out more by heading over to mustreadalaska.com and also checking out the Must Read Alaska YouTube channel for some really great content. But first, let's get this party started.
Well, welcome everybody to the Must Read Alaska show. We are live on location, kind of, here in Alaska. And man, we have a special treat for you. I'm your host, John Quick. And for those of you who just tuned in, I have Representative Tom McKay here with us. But before we go into that and welcome Tom McKay to the show, I want to thank everybody for listening. We have started this new format here on the Must Read Alaska show where we go live on Facebook first before we pump our show out to Spotify, Amazon, iTunes, Alexa, pretty much anywhere there where there's a podcast, you'll find us at, including iHeartRadio, which is pretty exciting. And this is a new segment called 5 Questions where I have guests on from all walks of life, and I get to ask them 5 questions. This segment is less about debate and more about just getting an opportunity to get to know somebody. And so we are excited to have Tom McKay, and we are also excited that as of this last week, we became the #2 podcast in the whole nation, in the whole U.S. Under the government section, which is just phenomenal. It's literally Suzanne and I operating from our living rooms. I'm literally in my son's room with my laptop on his little desk, and we are up against folks like the BBC, NBC, and folks with $1 million podcast budgets. So we thank you so much for listening. Welcome, Representative Tom McKay. Before we go into the 5 questions, Tom, tell everybody just a little bit about your district and where you, what area of Anchorage you represent.
Sure. Well, thank you, John. It's great to be with you this morning, and congratulations on your success. My name's Tom McKay. I represent South Anchorage District 24, the current District 24, which is basically Bayshore, Clat, and Ocean View. I was elected as a Republican in 2020, and I'm serving my first term in the State House as a freshman. We have an 18-member minority, and 8 of us are freshmen, so it's quite a remarkable group of new people and new blood that's in the House. And it's been my privilege to represent the good folks of South Anchorage and the people across the state of Alaska.
That's awesome, Tom. And you get to work with my representative, who I'm very proud of, Ben Carpenter, who just won a big award down at the CPAC event. And so thank you for serving. And we're going to go into our 5 questions. So question number 1 is this, Tom, Representative Tom McKay. How did you get involved in politics in the first place?
Well, my first exposure to politics was at Boys State. I think I was 17 years old. Boys State, sponsored by the American Legion, where they kind of do a mock convention. And I remember that was a long time ago now for me, but I came to Alaska in 1980. I was a petroleum engineering graduate from Montana Tech, and I worked in the oil industry in Alaska. And a funny thing happened. A lot of people get involved in politics when they get mad about something. And in 1989, we had the Exxon spill. I was working for Arco Alaska at the time. And the legislature in Juneau raised oil taxes, and they canceled my project.
Oh no!
And as a result of that increase, and I had little kids and a mortgage and a car payments like everybody else. And I said, "Who did that?" And they said, "Well, the guys in Juneau." And I said, "What guys in Juneau?" And they said, "The legislature." And I'm kind of like, "Who are those guys? And why are they messing with my career?" So I started watching Alaska politics in 1989. I got involved in campaigns and the Republican Party in 1990. And that was really how I got started in the whole thing.
That's awesome. It sounds like you saw an opportunity or maybe a problem that was happening and wanted to jump in and make a change. And I want to encourage folks that are listening That's how you get involved. Your initial step out the gate isn't becoming a senator or the governor. Your initial step out the gate is, helping on campaigns, making phone calls, helping write thank you letters. It's that kind of stuff. And, there's always going to be room to get involved in bigger and brighter ways down the future. But a lot of it just starts with the grind, as with anything in life. If you want to get good at it, you kind of got to know all the jobs that happen to be where you're at now, Representative McKay, where you won your election and you've been there for a couple years and kicking butt and taking names. So question number 2 is this: who do you look up to in the political world and why? Could be somebody, from the 80s, or could be somebody from the 2020s.
Well, there's probably there's a lot of folks that I looked up to. Of course, I guess it probably started with Ronald Reagan in my adult life, because he got elected in 1980, the same year that I graduated from college. So, you become an adult when you start paying taxes. And I liked Reagan, of course, his leadership and his way of communicating. And I think, like a lot of people, he was just a great leader for our country. Some Alaska politicians that I always admired back in the day, Fritz Pettyjohn, Rick Halford, conservative Republicans that espoused the values that I share. I helped Sean Parnell actually get elected his first House race. That was my first campaign that I worked on with Sean.
Hey, that's a good claim to fame. Sean Parnell's first House race.
Yeah, I think it was 1992. I still live in that same district that Sean, and of course, Sean eventually became governor, and now he's chancellor at the UAA. And so those are just a few. I mean, there were many. I'm pretty conservative nationally. Of course, I look up to, Rand Paul, Ted Cruz, that kind of segment of the party. Those are kind of the folks. Ron DeSantis. I voted for President Trump twice. I'm pretty conservative. And again, private sector. I think the most important presidential candidate that I ever met personally was I met Pat Buchanan and Steve Forbes. I spent time with Steve Forbes when we had the straw poll back in the 90s. And I was in the leadership of the Republican Party of Alaska at that time. Eventually became chairman of the party, and I thought that would be kind of it for my political career. And I worked overseas for 10 years. I worked in Indonesia and Norway, and then I came back. And then we had an opportunity to run in 2020. So it's kind of what do you call it? An unlikely warrior, I think, maybe. Something like that.
That's awesome. Well, it sounds like you have a lot of folks that you look up to. And for those of you that are just joining us, maybe you just hopped in, I have Representative Tom McKay here from Anchorage, and we are going over what is the new segment on Must Read Alaska show called 5 Questions. So Tom, question number 3 is this.
Mm-hmm.
What is something in your life that you are very proud of in terms of an accomplishment? It can be something in your work life or personal life, really anything, but what's something that you're pretty proud of that you accomplished?
Well, I guess I'd have to start out with saying that we've raised 5 beautiful children, 4 daughters and a son. The daughters are all grown up. We have 4 beautiful grandchildren, and they've all turned out just wonderful. And my son is a junior at Diamond High School. His hockey team just won the state tournament.
Oh, wow. Congratulations.
So that was a pretty big deal. All the early morning practices and skating, when you're involved in hockey, it's a daily grind, and we're really proud of him. And now we turn to baseball, so it's always fun to watch him play sports. But I've had 5 kids. They've all went through the Anchorage School District. They all went to Diamond High School. So I have a lot of connection to the community, and 4 of my kids are still in Alaska. My oldest daughter lives in Oregon, but we're pretty anchored here in Alaska. I did one thing I did at work that's kind of a big deal is I was the drilling engineer on the Alpine Discovery well. So I guess I made in my small way, I made the contribution to the oil production in the state, way back in the late 90s.
That's
And
awesome.
and I'd like to do more of that. Quite frankly, there's more opportunities out there to find more oil fields, and I'd like to have a chance to do that too. I did earn two master's degrees, one in engineering and one in MBA. My engineering master's was from UAA, and my MBA was from APU. So I'm pretty familiar with the local university system and the academic system for the kids. So
That's
those are probably
awesome.
some things that I've done.
That's awesome. It sounds like you've had a pretty good run with your professional career and just getting started with your elected political career. We hope that you keep running. Us conservatives and really appreciate the work that you and the minority in the House are doing. And it's probably a battle every day. Every
Oh
hour
yeah.
it's probably a battle, and oftentimes I think folks that help on campaigns, and when we finally get somebody like yourself elected, we think, oh crap, this is awesome. Now I don't have to worry about this for 2 years. But I want to encourage people that have helped on folks like Representative Tom McKay's campaign, to stay in touch with these elected officials throughout the year, because it's lonely at the top. It's a grind and a battle for true conservatives every day in Juneau, and they need help, encouragement just as much as everybody else does. Just because they're elected officials doesn't make them impervious to the daily grind of work scheduling. So just make sure to stay involved. That would be my encouragement. So Representative McKay, question number 4 is this: if there's something you could do in your life differently, whether it's personal or work, what's something that you look back on and you thought, man, I wish I would have done that differently, and maybe the lesson that you learned in it?
Well, to be honest, John, I'm kind of the type that I don't have any regrets, really. I think if you kind of dwell on things you could have done differently, then maybe it's not healthy. I'm kind of serendipitous. I just sort of move on and keep fighting. Don't look behind. But I probably wish I would have gotten my master's degrees sooner in my career. I got them when I was in my early 40s. It might have helped. And if I could give any advice to young people, it's, if you're going to go for an advanced degree like a master's, do it sooner. Do it in your 20s if you can, and then it may be more beneficial to your career advancement. I probably should have worked a tour in Houston. Houston's the oil capital of the world, as you know. I think in the oil industry, it probably helps your career advancement, maybe move up higher if you do a hitch in Houston. And I always kind of avoided that because I preferred the northern climates, but I don't really have a lot of big regrets, John. I mean,
Hey, that's awesome.
I'm pretty positive, I guess, and keep looking forward. I mean, you're gonna get knocked down, you're gonna get setbacks, you're gonna do things. There's probably a million things I could list out, but don't dwell on it. Get back up off the mat and keep fighting.
That's awesome. So tell us about this is you're somewhat newly elected. We got folks in the Senate and the House that have been there for years and years and years. And tell us about maybe one accomplishment this first go around that you're proud of as it relates to you and being elected House member.
Well, my number one objective was, as a staunch Republican, was to stay in caucus. I vote with my caucus almost all the time. We have long meetings discussing almost every vote, every issue, and we stick together. We're a very large minority. They told me we're the largest minority in the House, and I don't know what they said, 30 years or something like that. So we have a big group. 18 people is a big group to hold together in a minority, and we stick together. Probably the biggest vote I've been involved with was last summer. I think it was right at the end of June, where we voted to voted on the effective date of the budget, and a no vote would have shut down the government, and a yes vote would have kept the government open. And a lot of my conservative colleagues, including Ben Carpenter, they wanted us to vote no, to withhold our vote and shut down the government. And I voted yes. The reason I voted yes on that was because I figured my district in South Anchorage is it's not quite as conservative as some of the other districts, like in the Valley or on the Kenai.
Yep.
And I felt like my district probably wouldn't want that level of
That's where they draw the line
dramatic
in the
action.
sand.
And you know, I guess if maybe I regret something, that was a pretty big vote to not shut down the government. It only passed by a couple of votes. And that was probably the most consequential vote that I've taken. And I don't know, you can look back on it and say, oh, maybe I should have, maybe I should not have. But that was probably the biggest vote I've taken so far. I have introduced a couple of bills, one that would ban critical race theory teaching in Alaska schools, and another bill that would ban biological boys from competing in girls' sports. I don't expect either one of those bills to go far with the Democratic controlled majority, but I did file them to send a message and to let people know that we are speaking out for the folks that may not be willing to speak out on such sensitive issues.
Yeah, they probably won't even get out of committee, but good for you for sticking to your guns. And that's, I think, what makes America awesome, is that we have different viewpoints, and eventually you have to start talking with people about your different viewpoints, and that kind of forces the issue when you send a bill out there. And so good for you for doing that. For those of you that are just tuning in, we have Representative Tom McKay out of Anchorage. And Tom, thank you so much for joining us. Do you have any kind of last minute thoughts for our listeners? You have an opportunity to kind of speak to thousands of folks here, and any last minute thoughts you'd like to say before we head off?
Well, just try to summarize real quickly, John, and thanks for the opportunity. I'm a private sector person. I bring a private sector perspective to Juneau. I'm concerned about our private sector in Alaska, especially the wealth producing side, because it's been shrinking for a number of years. And the state government is becoming more dependent on savings and the permanent fund to survive. And I think that we're out of balance. We're out of balance with the private sector providing revenue for the government. And so what I worry about long term is that we'll shrink the private sector to the point where we'll lose a lot of Republican voters, a lot of conservative independent voters, and Alaska could turn blue. Mm-hmm. And I'm very concerned about that, because I think then Alaska will become a national park, and there'll be very few good paying jobs and opportunities up here in the private sector, and concerned about that. Finally, I think, James Kaufman has a great plan proposed for a spending cap. He links the spending cap to GDP. And if the private sector is producing less GDP, then the government has less revenue to spend, and vice versa on the upside. So it incentivizes government to have a flourishing private sector so that they'll have more money to spend. So anyway, I'm concerned about that whole dynamic. I think I don't like the trajectory that we're on, where we're basically turning into a state that's funded by a trust fund.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Tom. And thanks so much for everybody who has tuned in and has listened. You were on the Must Read Alaska show. And for those of you who are looking for different avenues to find out where Must Read Alaska is, we're on Facebook, we're on YouTube, we're on MeWe, we're on LinkedIn, even we're on Twitter. We're pretty much anywhere you could post any sort of social media, we're on. We're also at mustreadalaska.com. And for those of you that have supported us in the past, we thank you. If you want to support us again, you can go to mustreadalaska.com, click on that right-hand side, and do a little donate for us. Every penny that you contribute helps go to support conservative news in Alaska. We also have an app out there on the iTunes Store and the Google Play Store. Lots of work went into developing this app to give it free to everybody that's listening. So you can go down there and download it for free. We also have a swag store. we got so many different opportunities for folks to grab our stuff and to get involved. And so thanks so much for listening and for helping us keep the mainstream media on their toes. You can tune in to James Baisden Friday morning, 7 a.m. He'll be on the Must Read Alaska show live here on Facebook. Until then, we're coming to you live from somewhere in Alaska. Thanks so much for joining us. And we hope everybody has a phenomenal day. Thanks so much, Representative Tom McKay.